Welcome to Planet People, a podcast that aims to inspire curiosity and cultivate a deeper connection with the natural world.
We are thrilled to be sharing stories with you that highlight the beauty and importance of protecting our planet's wildlife.
Be sure to follow us on social media and your favorite podcast streaming platform so that you never miss an episode. Hey, Coral.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I'm excited to do a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, we're starting the week off strong with these records, so
Definitely.
It's Monday. It might not be Monday if you're listening, but it's Monday for us.
A gray Monday, but I know it'll be nice for a little overcast walk later. What was your breath of fresh air for the weekend?
My breath of fresh air was last night. I was sitting in my backyard and we were just looking at all of the different hummingbirds that are around because we have a hummingbird feeder in a tree in my backyard. And there was this one that was just sitting like so stoically on a palm tree. And like in this, like you could just see the silhouette. And it was so cute because the sun was setting and then on like, it was just like, boop, right on top of this palm tree. And we were just laughing at it. And it was so cute. We were like, there's not really any more hummingbirds around. And then one starts flying over. And that one that was sitting on the palm tree just comes over and charges at them. They're so territorial. It's really interesting.
They are territorial. And when there are feeders around, usually that brings out a little bit more of that competitive energy between birds since they're competing for resources. So if you see that happening and they displace each other like that, it's probably because they're competing.
It was just funny to like be like, oh my God, so beautiful. And then he's just like, we think he's so cute. And then all of a sudden he's like, back off.
Right.
Fighting.
Nature is not as soft as you think it is, but it is still soft. It has its moments, right? Just like we do.
What about you? What's your breath of fresh air?
My breath of fresh air from the weekend is definitely the baby possum.
Oh, yeah.
That was in the hedges behind my house. And it was just so cute. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And that's an unusual time to see an opossum because they're nocturnal. And so they're not usually active during the day, right? You see them mostly at night. And it was just this adorable little lost possum by itself. It must have just left its mother. It's kind of nearing the end of like what I call baby season, where the spring brings a lot of like new babies, seabirds. We have some cute chicks across from our house on the roof, some seagull chicks, and they have fledged the nest. So kind of like the possum is on its own too. And it was just so freaking cute.
That's cute. I think possums are underrated. People get really grossed out by them, but I think they're so cute.
They're so cute. And raccoons
kind of
too.
Harmless. I feel like, I don't know. They're just really harmless to humans. They're like little kittens almost, the babies.
They're so cute. Yeah. They do have some feisty teeth on them though.
Oh, okay. Well, good to know.
Yeah, they're cute at first, but I don't think you want to get into a snarl fight with one of those.
Yeah. Not going to be fighting a possum anytime soon.
I hope not.
Well, cool. This episode is for All Creatures podcast. We are so happy to have collabed with them, and hopefully there will be more opportunities for collaboration in the future. If you don't know already, All Creatures is an amazing podcast talking about literally all of the creatures. They go over so many different types of creatures, and they're also just, Chris and Angie are just absolutely
they're great hosts.
Yeah.
Charismatic, really easy to listen to, and engaging conversation. And I remember listening to All Creatures before we even started Planet People, thinking, how cool is this? Talking about so many different types of animals on like a biological understanding of the animals, but also bringing in stories and fun facts and things to make the conversation around animals a little bit more exciting without being super sciencey. So I feel like it's super relatable for any audience who cares or is interested in learning about animals. And they've been a podcast since I think 2017. They have quite the audience. So this is a big opportunity for us that they wanted to do this really exciting round robin style discussion. So we hope you guys like it. We really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was a nice roundtable that we got to do. And we talked about all different types of things like, generational differences in conservation, what inspired us. We also talked about what gives us hope, and we do some fun speed rounds and some games. So definitely listen till the end. And then also, if you are here from All Creatures and now you are listening to Planet People, welcome. We are so happy to have you. We tell conservation stories on a regional basis. And so our first season is about ocean conservation, and our second season is about desert
conservation.
Southern California and beyond the greater Southwest. So welcome. We're so happy to have you. And we are so excited to show you guys this episode with All Creatures. So give it a listen.
Thanks, guys. Hope you like it.
Hey, welcome, Coral, Natalie, and Angie. Good to see everybody. I think to start this off, we just kind of introduce ourselves. Coral, do you want to start, and then we can go to Natalie, and then me and Angie can kind of introduce who we are?
Sure. Yeah, we are so excited for this episode today, this All Creatures and Planet People episode collab. My name is Coral Carson. For those of you who don't know, I am co-host of Planet People podcast, and I am the non-scientist video background, animation background person here that's just like super interested in all these topics and like the media brain and also the layman's terms brain to all the conversations that we have. So I'm the usually perceived like, what are you guys saying? So that's usually me in the conversations.
Hey, Chris and Angie, thank you guys so much for having us on All Creatures today. We're excited to have you join us on the Planet People side of things too. And my name is Natalie Cibel, and I'm the co-host and founder of Planet People. And in my non-podcasting time, I'm a full-time biologist. And I really wanted to start Planet People based on my own experiences in the field working with endangered species. And I felt this calling to bring forth my knowledge from the field and being on the ground and working with these animals and bringing that information out to the public in an easy to understand way where, we're all just excited to learn more about these animals, get connected, and really understand the threats that they face. So on Planet People, we talk a lot about endangered species, wildlife, and how to really steward the environment and bring in all of these different stories from people that I've personally met on my field biology journey, Coral being one of them. Coral and I went to college together 10 years ago. And when I started the podcast, I had no idea what I was doing. And with her expertise in media, she hopped on the show and has been such a great help ever since. And now we're in season 2, and she's my co-host this season, whereas in the first season I was kind of more on my own. And I'm so glad that now she's more full-time co-host and also creative director. So we are what we like to say work wives, and we've had a lot of fun with Planet People, and we're excited to be here today on All Creatures.
Awesome. My name is Angie, and I am a mom, an animal nature lover, a scientist, professor, a podcast host. I've been doing all those things for a while now. Some days, some things are more my favorite than other days. It just depends. But as just an educator an animal lover from day one. I love talking to people about animals, about science, about conservation. I worked for years as a zookeeper. So although I studied zoology and more the science of animals, working as a zookeeper at the Lincoln Park Zoo, where they do a ton of field research and conservation, definitely opened my eyes. I learned a lot, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit more on the podcast. And yeah, then after that, I went to grad school where I met Chris. He's my advisor, and I decided to study animal science because I wanted to learn more about like the actual behavior and physiology of animals. And yeah, that led me to my career as a professor and a podcast host. So yeah, it's who knows what's in store next. So that's why I love meeting and talking with people, because conservation in general, the one thing I've really learned is it does take a village, and the more people you meet and in your network or in your court, it definitely helps. So I'm so glad to meet you two today and to be here talking about all creatures, all conservation. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, it is wonderful to see other people out there really with this passion to make the world a better place for all these animals that don't have a voice. And Angie and I first met, going on 16 years ago, when she showed up into my office, and little did I know she'd become one of my closest friends in the whole world. She's like my sister, and her husband John's like my brother, and her family and my family are very close. I was a professor at the University of Florida for many years, and Angie gets a lot of credit for this podcast in the sense that she showed up into my office and said, Dr. Mortensen, you need to look more into exotic animals, endangered species. And I said, okay, that's great, Angie. Here, we need to look at these papers, get to work, because we were using domestics because that's where all the research money was. But because of her, I did start looking more into the sixth mass extinction we find ourselves in. I knew of endangered species and elephants. I guess I'm preempting one of our questions, but I've always loved elephants and the struggles they're going through with the ivory trade and loss of habitat and stuff. And so I said, okay, Angie, and we went and looked at a conservation center in Florida. We talked about in the podcast, White Oak. And I just was blown away. And I was like, okay, Angie, well, here's the most endangered equid in the world, Somali wild ass. That's our original donkeys. There's maybe 50 in the wild today. And they had a herd of it. I said, well, let's start doing research with them. And because of Angie, I learned about behavior. We did Grevy zebra. Then we jumped into Angie's work, trying to help southern white rhinos. And then I brought in another grad student who's actually one of Angie's best friends today. And she came in and we were looking at elephants, African, Asian, manatees, and then rock hyrax. So when I left academia, I heard this thing, podcasts were growing. This is back in 2017. And I said, Angie, I'm moving to New Zealand. And she knew all that and part of that discussion. And I said, let's try this podcast. There's nothing really out there. You look, there was nothing on nature. There was nothing on really animals. And she said, okay, we'll try it and see how it goes. And here we are 8 years later, millions of downloads. We've been up against NASA as a top science podcast in the world. That's what I love hang our hat on. We were nominated and we both lost to STEM Talk that year, which is fine. Houston, we have a podcast, and All Creatures both lost, but we were nominated next to them. And that passion hasn't died in us. And we're looking at ways how to grow and how to get this information out because, as these animals are facing some dire situations. So that's what drives us. And that's really where we are with the All Creatures. Now, today I'm working with an animal health company out of Australia, New Zealand, Poseidon Animal Health. And I do a lot of consulting work, helping companies spread their education and message. But yeah, All Creatures is always there for me and Angie. When you reached out to us, and we were talking a little bit this before we hit record, and the baby boomer generation's listening, and please keep listening to younger generations. Because of you, we have a Jane Goodall, a David Attenborough, you can go down the list of wonderful, incredible people who have inspired us as children growing up. And you have started the fight that we are now carrying. I identify as a Gen Xer. Angie is on the line between a millennial Gen Xer, and Coral and Natalie are millennials, right? You got that right, yeah. And you have friends that are Gen Z. So I think today's conversation really is looking at this generational gap and what your experiences were growing up, how it inspired you, but give the perspective of what's going on in the planet. Because Gen Xers, we are now stepping forward in leadership, political positions around the world. The baby boomer generation is retiring mostly, and millennials and Gen Zers are stepping into that space now too. These are the decision makers in the next few decades that are going to shape humanity. I've no doubt. What we decide in the next 10, 20, 30 years is going to impact our children, our great-grandchildren, blah, 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 blah. So I guess my first question is, and Coral, you can go first. What has shaped you regarding environmentalism, animal conservation, growing up? What are the things that you saw, any disasters or something that said, wow, I need to be active and do something about this?
Yeah, well, it's funny. You have the oil spill on this shared doc that we had to prepare for this episode. The BP oil spill, I definitely would say for me, like that was actually a big one, because I feel like it was the first like pausing moment that everyone kind of took, at least in America and in the place that I was around, of being like, oh shit. Mm-hmm. We messed up big time. Like, this is a huge mess up kind of thing. And I remember when I was a kid, like, being so distraught over something like that. And learning that it happens way more frequently than we realize. And so I do think that for me is a shaping moment. And then another one for me also is, something that we had already mentioned. Maybe, I don't know if we hit record, but animals can't speak for themselves. Who's going to speak for them? And that's something that I've always kind of just had within me, even as a kid. And I think in my senior year, I did a huge like school project on like cloning and like how there's no like real regulation and just the horrific nature around that. And then just to learn how little rights they do have. And, they're becoming to be more rights around animals and in different zones as well, which is amazing to see. But I think that when you care so deeply about something, and I was always someone that like loved being out in nature and loved like big animals and small animals and just all of the above. And then to just know how little protection that they have around it is like always just a huge, like, honestly, just like it feels like I'm being stabbed in the heart every time I like learn about it. Even, I know we're going to talk about it later, but the documentary Ocean, like I definitely teared up watching that at some points. And I'm still learning about how there's so little protection even to this day. And so for me, that has to be like, yeah, the moments that kind of shape my conservation ethos.
Yeah, Natalie, same thing for you. Like, why do you do what you do today? Because you're out there in the field. I remember we had a call. You were out in the field. So that's incredible.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We were in the field during that phone call, and I was lucky enough that I could even tune in. And I remember when we were talking, I saw a golden eagle when we were on the phone. Yeah, that was crazy. That was back in the spring, and I was working on a project where I was monitoring desert tortoises. And so there have been some defining moments in my career, and, there are definitely those childhood early moments as well. But to Coral's point, that there are still these things that keep our passion going, and those aha moments, they just continue to happen because animals will always be in peril, and they will always, hopefully, they won't always need our voice, right? That's why the desert tortoise is on the endangered species list, so that it can get enough protections to eventually be delisted one day. But until that happens, then we have a role to play And it's not just a role, it's an obligation to serve the planet. And that's what stewardship means, right? You're in service to the planet and to people and to animals. And when you live a life in service to those things, you will always feel fulfilled. So that's another reason to keep going, in my opinion. And I'm thinking of some aha moments that I can share. I'll share two quickly because I don't want to take too long on this question because I know we have so much to go through, but stories really are at the heart of really sharing this passion and evoking that emotion in people to understand why we feel connected to these animals. And I remember when I was in fourth grade, maybe it was fifth grade, and I had just started private Catholic school and I was learning about climate change. And at the time it was called global warming. And the way that people were describing it, and I remember Al Gore had explained it this way, that it was like we were putting a big blanket around the globe and we were causing this immense warming at a rapid pace. And I just remember that metaphor so clearly sitting in class and thinking we're putting a blanket around the planet because of fossil fuels in the atmosphere. So those were things that I learned so early on about global warming. That's definitely stuck with me when I eventually went on to go to public school for high school, and I took advanced environmental science, like the AP environmental science class, to get college credit, and just continuing to learn about global warming, which at the time, I think this is also an interesting generational difference in just how we perceive the human impact on the planet. It was once called global warming, and now it's called climate change. And that was something I had put in the document because I think that's a really interesting, kind of middle ground in terms of how the narrative around this problem has changed just in our lifetime, in my lifetime alone. When I was in, fifth grade, I think that was 2006 or something. And Al Gore was, he had run against Bush the first time, right? Mm-hmm. And he was really pushing the environmental agenda. Mm-hmm. Gosh, had he been in office, things would be so different today. Yep. So again, to your point, Chris, that we are shaping the future policy. Gen Xers, Gen Zers, millennials, all of us will eventually be in those roles. And it's like we almost had that with Al Gore, and then things would have been shaped differently. But anyways, that first moment about learning what global warming meant just changed so much. And that's so different now because we don't call it global warming anymore. Do
you know why? I'm just going to jump in. Okay, so I got
yes,
the book.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, The Parrot in the Igloo. This was David Lipsky. I interviewed him over a year ago. Incredible author. And this book, I remember telling Angie, I was like, Angie, you got to read this book. They changed it because it is Frank Luntz, who's people know him in the States as a pollster and very, how do you say this without saying too political, but very conservative. How about that? And this whole book is about, why we don't trust climate science. And it all goes back to the tobacco industry. Tobacco industry was trying to discredit science about smoking kills, and they didn't want that message out. So go discredit all of science. And that has carried over into climate science and carried over into other things. Frank Luntz went and did focus groups. Climate change is less scary than global warming. So whenever you say climate change, and David Lipsky's awesome. He was so great to talk to. He's like, cha-ching. That's more money for Frank Luntz because he coined it and it carried. And now across the world, we are not calling it global warming, which is scary. We call it climate change. So
that's interesting. I always thought, though, it had a little bit to do with the fact that, of course, overall, the climate is warming. The globe is warming. But there are weird trends in certain places depending on where you live. Like it might be colder, or you might get more snow than normal, or more rain, and might be wet and rainy, depending on where you live, to help capture the fact that it might not be an immediate hot. It might be maybe a little more snow this year, but then none for the next 5 years. That's why I thought so. It was changed, but so that's a really fascinating fact.
It's political. Yep.
It's crazy everything is political. It's crazy.
I know it's not shocking. It's just annoying.
Yeah.
Well, it's that fear-based element that's really interesting. So it's not just political, it's psychological, because if you want people to understand the meaning of it, then you have to remove that emotional barrier, and fear just takes over people's emotions. And so then you really have a blocker up from even having the discussion about what the hell does it mean?
Right.
Because they don't want to hear it because they're scared.
Yep.
So what were you guys' aha moments?
Well, for me, I've always loved animals. I came out the womb loving animals and nature. So I don't think there was an aha moment for that. There was probably an aha moment for my parents when they're like, oh my God, she will not shut up about a horse lesson. We will just give it to her. But yeah, and then of course I studied zoology. And so animals were always there. The conservation element started in college because I did minor in environmental biology. So I knew I wanted to do zoology, but I already knew, in last century, back in the late 1900s, that the world was on fire. And so I was like, I should probably understand a little bit more about environmental biology. And no matter what, I think I'm going to need that later in life. Like I had that insight. I don't know where that came from, but I had that insight. So I studied a lot more about it, environmental geochemistry, just some soil science, lots of classes I had to take. But I actually want to really get my hands wet and work harder towards education and science, field biology, and and podcasting, however I could get the message out there to help animals would have to be when I laid my hands on Bobby Zebra. She's a endangered Grevy zebra when I was a zookeeper. I had been zookeeping for about 2 years before I shifted over to the barn where she was. And you don't go in with the dangerous animals there. We have what's called protected contact. But she had been clicker trained using positive reinforcement to come to the trainer to either be brushed or for medical procedures, things like that. And so I actually got to put my hand on her hand, and then they're like, yeah, there's only 30 of these guys under human care and anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 in the wild total. And that's, I have goosebumps right now just thinking about that's when I'm like, okay, how can I help? Let's go. So that was probably, and then about a year later, I met my husband, who we have similar philosophies. And and then that led me to the University of Florida to meet Chris, also very passionate about animals and conservation. So definitely touching an endangered animal for sure. Knowing that my kids may never be able to do that. They're grandkids. And it's not, I like to touch the animals, obviously. It's not about touching, but just seeing them. And Chris and I talk about that a lot on the podcast. Some of these animals we cover, we're like, our grandkids will not be able to see these guys in the wild. Mm-hmm. Maybe under human care if they're lucky, but not in the wild. And that's one of my, driving forces is to anything I can do to help the future generations is where I want to be involved.
Yeah. No, and I'll follow up. Angie's a brilliant scientist, by the way. As she's talking, I'm just thinking of all the stuff she did. It's just brilliant. And it was because of Angie. Again, I came out of the womb. I wanted to be a wildlife vet. That was my trajectory in life. San Diego Zoo. I grew up in San Diego, California, as a young. My earliest memories. 4 or 5 years old, walking up and down those hills there, and the capture of those animals. Whale watching off the California coast as a young kid. But the big aha moment for me was Angie, again, comes to my office. We need to be looking at this more. What can we do? And, we went to White Oak. Angie and I saw hairpin, Sumatran rhino. He was born at the Cincinnati Zoo. One of 60 or 70 left in the world. He actually got shipped to Sumatra. God. Yeah. So he's back in the wild, or in Bomas in the wild, trying to help his species. But seeing the smaller wild ass, I go back to my office the next week and I start doing some research. And this paper still to this day sits in my gut. And it was, has the Earth's sixth mass extinction already arrived? And I said, what? And I started reading it. And this was out of, Nature is the biggest journal in the world, one of them for science. And they were talking about the dramatic decrease in species, and that our trajectory today, and that was today, that was 10 years ago, we were losing species faster than all the previous big five extinctions. So when you think of all the dinosaurs dying out in a matter of weeks, but to get to that 70, 80% mass extinction rate, it's actually quicker now than it was then. That killed off a lot of megafauna right away, but it took a long time for all the other species, plant life, amphibians, reptiles, all of them. It still took, hundreds of years for them to all die out. So we're killing the planet quicker than when an asteroid hit us. That's what scientists believe. And so I turned to Angie and said, okay, what can we do? And that gave me the fire. I started teaching. I'm like, okay, here I'm in a position where I have students, and I started putting together a talk that I gave in my classes to the wildlife clubs. I still do it today. I've done it to vet clubs around the world. Here in New Zealand, I do it at universities here. And I talk about the state of the planet. But that was the big one. When I read that paper and the science and the data says we're killing the planet, I took notice and said, okay. And then that again led to the All Creatures podcast and everything else we're doing.
I remember that article.
Yeah. It scared me.
Yeah, I remember reading it.
Yeah. It scared me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just another thing for me of like, anytime I just read one of I'm like, what can I do? Having that same reaction that you had.
Yep.
What am I going to, especially me not being a scientist, like, I feel like in another life I was, but like, I've always wanted to be in film and TV as a kid. And so, National Geographic was like a huge inspiration for me. And, I love animation too. So I always want to like bring environmentalism into the animation space. And then also like, so there's all these different like career paths that I've like in another life, but then, that's what Planet People, it's so nice to have this like media outlet for conservation.
And that's why I loved bringing you on the team, because you can really build this, what I recently learned, this term called a skenius, where people of different backgrounds and skill sets can come together for the same mission. You don't have to be a scientist to care. And that's something that we always say on Planet People, because it's true. I mean, Coral isn't a scientist, and she's doing so much for conservation by just bringing her media expertise into a space that desperately needs media attention. Let's be honest, social media has completely changed the landscape for conservation messaging in the last 5 years alone, 10. But I mean, really, I've seen it explode since the pandemic. I remember I started trying to do that communication piece years ago, like right after the pandemic, and it was still just starting, people are starting to bring conservation messaging into the space, and now it's a completely different landscape. So it's really cool to see, just to your point about this generational difference, in the last 5 years alone, the conservation space has totally changed because of social media.
Well, and it definitely gives me hope too, because Chris and I have interviewed a lot of people, and we know a lot of people, our colleagues and whatnot. And some of these scientists are boring as hell. Like, they are brilliant scientists. And I mean, I love what they're doing because I understand it, but they're not good at expressing it in a way that is helpful or constructed or generates enthusiasm for what they're doing. And some of that's personality, some of that's probably like just who they are, but also some we're not really trained in how to be an educator in higher academia. You're trained in your science and how to be better at it, and your individual discipline, and then teaching is just a kind of an aside. And it's a skill set. Some people maybe are better at it just naturally, but overall it's a skill set to be able to take your science or whatever, to give it that elevator pitch. And we know salespeople, if you're a good salesman, you're already good at it, right? But throughout the years of this podcast, I've had scientists, like I said, that are maybe not the best at selling their science and getting people excited. And so that's where it is fun to have people with different areas of expertise. We've had a teacher on the podcast before. We've had artists, we've had filmmakers, we had wildlife photographers. I mean, it takes a village, and that's where throughout the years, Chris and I have definitely been inspired, of course, by the scientists. Yes, out in the field, trekking 2 weeks to get camera traps to look for the tigers, and then 2 weeks out, and just some of the field biology stuff is just wow. Those people are awesome campers and true conservation heroes, getting bit by bugs and doing all of that.
We're on the front lines out there.
We are on the front lines. And I love hearing their story, because I'm like, that is not where I'm at in my life right now. Like I need my special pillows and my melatonin,
your creature comforts.
My creature comforts right now. Even when I was younger, maybe not so much, but so there's something there for everybody. And obviously people always tend to think of like, oh, you have to be a scientist, but you don't. I mean, and golly gee, do we need more media people, social media, that kind of thing to help get the message across. And a lot of zookeepers or trained field biologists or high up scientists or whatever are not necessarily good at the social media or good at the sound bites or helping get people excited about what they're doing. So that's where I think I'm excited about what you guys are doing and getting the little bit more tech savvy generation involved.
Mm-hmm. And you guys are doing the same. So
yeah.
Trying.
Oldie fogies. Angie, I think you got the hot potato on the next question. So I think you want to.
Well, I read a question, and this can maybe be a quick one definitely for Natalie and Coral, but just maybe a 1 or 2 sentence of what does conservation mean to you? Natalie, do you want to go first?
Sure. Conservation to me means preserving the wildness of a species and a place. And that looks like right now fighting extinction on like an advocacy level. I've had my boots on the ground working with many endangered animals from, the western snowy plover, the California least tern, the Mojave desert tortoise, the burrowing owl in California was just listed from a species of special concern to threatened. And so to me, that's what conservation looks like in kind of modern day, is trying to get these species delisted. And then I think it also involves a more, holistic message now because of the state of the world that we're in. And as a millennial, we can no longer just enjoy nature and enjoy wild things. It's not enough it's the first step. But if you want these places to be preserved, then conservation also looks like advocacy now. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm like the field biologist turned like activist by choice, but also out of necessity. So I think conservation can be, it's such a vague term, sort of. A lot of things can be defined as conservation. And I think that's one of the pitfalls of conservation, right? So fighting extinction on a local level for a global impact, working with local communities, with the animals, with land preservation, and it all comes back to, definitely protecting those public lands and who is stewarding those lands and monitoring the wildlife, the people that live there. And it's those voices that we need to uplift as well, because these bigger international conservation orgs that think they're about the conservation mission, like you have the wildlife, what's the one with the panda? World Wildlife
WWF.
Fund.
WWF.
Yeah. So like these conglomerate big conservation organizations that are kind of rooted in this traditional, kind of colonialist based conservation methods that are solely focusing on megafauna. And then the people in those areas where those megafauna exist get overlooked. And if their needs aren't met, then they're going to continue to poach the animals for food, to poach the forest for firewood, for energy. So that's another piece of conservation now. You cannot overlook the community-based element anymore. And if you are, then you're behind the times, in my opinion. Oh, well, and that's coming from a millennial.
Well, and it's not an opinion. I mean, there's several studies that have shown clear data that the chance of helping to save species and protect the lands are going to be much more successful if you get not only the local people involved, but actually like the school children age. Get them on board as well. So yeah, no, I agree 100%, Natalie. Coral, any thoughts you want to add to that about conservation?
Yeah, I'll try to keep mine to 1 to 2 sentences.
No, I loved it.
Oh my gosh.
Natalie,
It
was
so great. It was so great.
I was
Show
right
the
along
passion.
with you. I'm like, I answered that question myself because I like, and I had like 16 bullet points. So I'm glad. Yeah, yes.
There's no
No,
keeping
it
me
was
1 to
great.
2 sentences. With my ADHD brain, I just keep
I
going.
love it. I love it.
No, Natalie, that was a perfect answer. But no, I'll try to keep mine short. I think conservation, what it means to me is keeping wild, and that can mean a number of different things, which Natalie just let us know. But I think a lot of it can stem from being preventative. I think that's a huge, like, I just want to preventative, let's be preventative. And then also like captive breeding, community-based conservation, education. There's a lot that goes into it, but let's just keep our wild spaces wild if we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does conservation mean to both of you? As you have spent, you said several, 20 years at least in this field, how has it evolved, right? In terms of it just being maybe that frontline, like activism, where you're on the ground. What does it look like now?
I'll jump in real quick, Ange. Yeah, it's interesting to listen to you, and I think something that Angie and I have learned over the years interviewing these experts is community-based conservation is probably the strategy that is the most impactful, like data coming out of Nepal. It's like I just interviewed Aldo Kane. He's the star of The Wild Ones. In one of those episodes, they go to Gabon and this village is trying to establish ecotourism with the lowland gorilla. And so they used to be, there's a lot of deforestation going on there. And so they're in that space trying to desensitize the gorillas to humans, which we know has saved the mountain gorilla ecotourism. So I think conservation has shifted quite a bit just in the last 8 to 10 years. And then I'll stop talking. So my 1 to 2 sentences is just giving a voice again, like we open it up, giving a voice to those that don't have one. And they need advocates. And I will say, hopefully it's something we can talk about is, do you feel hopeful or not? But there are people like us out there on the ground, like Natalie's out in the desert, Coral's busy in her lab, creating, and Angie's out teaching, I'm out teaching, where there are a lot of people out there. We're not alone. There's millions of us fighting for these animals.
Yeah, and Chris and I have had the privilege to interview what I consider to be like one person that can make a huge difference. And of course you have, bigger organizations that have, more name and clout and money and all of that. But there's really some grassroots stuff out there that really brings me hope and does show me that, putting the right person, and of course then it ends up being a team to get it all done. Like one of them that comes to mind for me is Jill Robinson. I interviewed her a couple years ago from Animals Asia, all about the Asiatic bear issue there, where their gallbladder is used for allegedly medicinal purposes. So they're just kept alive in these horrible, horrible cages and situations. So they're bile can be drained. And 30 years ago or so, she was like, this is horrific. And she moved to Asia. And I mean, she has made a huge impact, not only on education, but literally on policy in some of the countries over there. There's still ones that she's working with to try to get them to fight harder for these bears and put more laws into place. But that to me, that's just incredible. And she just got a bug up her butt and said, I'm doing something about it. Right. And she has, I mean, oh my gosh. And so that kind of wraps for me, that just like embodies conservation. So to me, it's ethical. So it's like a very, conservation is my responsibility to nature. And then because I have kids, I feel like conservation is, I think Natalie mentions stewardship for future generations, right? Like, so that they can go to the national parks here in the United States, that I went to as a kid, that my grandparents went to when they saw all 50 states. And that's just an example in the US per se. For me, it's also, conservation to me is almost, spiritual. Like it's about connecting to places and community and just really wanting to preserve that. And of course I want to preserve the mountain gorillas, or the national parks, but I want to preserve my own neighborhood where my kids ride their bikes. I want it to not be polluted. I want it to not be bulldozed, that kind of thing. So yeah, but conservation is also hope for me, and then everyday action. So.
Yeah, it's funny. Just real quick, Angie, you said, I think Jill Robinson's the first one that came to my mind when you said, wow, somebody making a difference, because Angie got to speak with her. And yeah, that's how one person, so everybody listening, you're like, oh, can I make a difference? Yes. Mike Veal came to my mind, Global Conservation Force there in San Diego. He is a rock star. He was a zookeeper that said, you know what, I'm going to do something about it. He left the zoo profession, and where Global Conservation Force is in Africa, the poachers stay away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he talk about making a difference. And it's a two-front thing. It's not just in Africa. They're in Asia educating, like Angie said, those younger generation up and coming, that rhino horn does nothing. It does nothing. It does nothing. Your hair does as much. Chew up your hair, but I want to ask, who inspired you growing up? Like, who was the inspiration to that was really made an impact on your life to do the work that you're doing? We'll start with Natalie. Yeah, we'll go
on this one. Yeah, she'll have a great answer.
Sure. Well, I have so many different role models. It's hard to pick one, but I think the most obvious choice, I think actually more in my recent years as an adult, would be Jane Goodall. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. And first and foremost being that her story.
She's coming to LA soon, just so you know. I just saw a blast about it.
I saw her tour. She's coming back to the US in the fall. And I was just talking to my mom about it, who is also Jane. And so my middle name is Jane. There's been a long ongoing connection, I think, in more recent years as I've progressed into my career as a conservationist, tying back just that name Jane to like my own mother and to Jane Goodall and to myself as Natalie Jane. I've always liked kind of going by that. And she's an icon mainly because, well, there's so many reasons why she's an icon, but her story of going to Africa, of course, to study wild chimpanzees is remarkable, aspirational, and uncovering the first observation of chimpanzees using a tool for the very first time to get ants out of their ant holes. So that was remarkable in itself. But I think it's her legacy after that inspires me more, because I feel so aligned with her feminine coded approach, let's say, to conservation, where she uses empathy to study her subjects. And it's this spiritual component to studying nature in a less scientific way, where, Angie, you said something earlier that really resonated with me, that conservation is spiritual to you. And I feel that Jane really embodies that spiritual element that I was looking for in a time where I felt like I didn't fit into the scientist box, where I didn't agree with the methods that were being used. I didn't agree with the outcomes. Species were still declining. And I just was looking for a way to make a bigger difference and go beyond that scientist box. And I thought Jane was just the perfect role model for that because of her feminine coded approach to studying science. And that has carried with me because I think it's important to bring empathy into how we perceive this climate crisis, how we want to fight extinction with wildlife, how we want to help people and the planet. And that's another thing that Jane brought into her research and her whole ethos is that community-based conservation element that we talk so much about on Planet People and that we've talked about in this discussion. And her Takare approach, which is like, when you sound it out, it's take care. And that's her like community-based conservation research program. And so the Jane Goodall Institute, Roots and Shoots, all of that embody that community-based conservation element that I feel is at the core of my own ethos now. As someone who was so interested in fighting species extinction, now I feel that there's this holistic approach that she embodies and is just the perfect role model to me. And I could go on, but I think you get the point that she took her studies beyond the field, whereas her counterparts like Diane Fossey,
yes,
she did not want to leave the field. She did not like communicating with the public. And for those tuning in, there were 3 primatologists that were famous in the 70s that all studied under Louis Leakey. So Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey with the mountain gorillas, and then or the silverback gorillas. And then I forget the third one. But anyways, there were a lot of really great women that came out of that time that were such fantastic role models. And Sylvia Earle's another one, for example. So identifying with those female conservationists has definitely been more of a recent thing than I would even say a childhood thing. I feel like everyone's childhood thing was like Steve Irwin. Yeah. I know Coral loves Steve Irwin. But yeah, that's my long-winded answer. So
beautiful. I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And just to piggyback off of that, we got to meet Jane Goodall last year, which was like a huge, awesome.
Yes, that was fantastic meeting her.
Yes.
And so we got to meet her in the Bay Area, and then Natalie actually went on was it a research trip, or it was kind of your own solo?
Yeah, it was just a research venture of my own to go to Tanzania and trek with chimpanzees, where I eventually did get to meet her at the end of that trip, which was a miraculous happen chance. And that's another story we can talk about. But I want to make sure Coral gets to share her role models.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, for me, I mean, Steve Irwin was definitely a huge one. I mean, that's like, I feel like everyone's kind of go to a lot of the time. He was just so iconic. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I wouldn't have thought about this. I remember when Steve Irwin died, I had this like scooter. It was probably like one of the first like electric scooters ever. And like, for some reason I had one. And me and one of my best friends in the neighborhood, she also had one too. So we like felt like we were so cool on these like electric scooters and everyone else was on a bike. And so we were going around our neighborhood, just like crying and shouting it out to everyone. And just like mourning Steve Irwin, like around our neighborhood on these little scooters. And it was just so impactful of like, oh my God, we lost such a cool person. That's like so inspiring. And, yeah, but I'm glad that you said that, Natalie, because the person I was actually going to mention was somebody that like nobody knows. This is just a person in my life who was a little bit older than me, and she went to the same college that Natalie and I did at UNCW, University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and she was in the marine biology. That's what her degree was in, marine biology. And I just remember her coming home on breaks and talking about, you know, her studies and like the different field work that she was doing. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like that you're doing that. And this is an older like sister figure that I had growing up. And so when she would come home for breaks, I was young. I want to say probably like 10 years old. And so to hear her come back from like college, like, this is a cool college girl, you know, like you're so much older than me and I'm looking up to you. And so for her to come back home and talk about all of the research that she was doing at school. And I think the biggest impact for me was there was a just like forest-ish area that was near my house that they started bulldozing. And I remember when they started bulldozing, I was so sad. I was like, why are you guys just, at the time I didn't know what it was called, but I was like, why are you taking all these trees away? But they were like clear cutting it for a shopping mall. And they ended up getting halted on that project because they found an endangered species of some kind. I actually don't even know what it was. I think it was an insect of some kind. And I remember my friend that was coming home from school, she knew somebody that was on that project. And so that's when it clicked into my head of like, oh, like, if you care about something, if you care about a place, like, and you can actually do something about it. So her friend was on the forefront of like halting that development. And so that was kind of like a very like clicking moment of you can make change if you care about something and care about the environment. And so she was sort of, I would say, one of my first like direct inspirations of like somebody I know that is in this field. And before I even knew that you could be, because, you know, even though Steve Irwin was such an iconic figure and so inspirational, it's like it's kind of like a far away, distant, like, you know, inspiration. So it feels almost like untouchable versus having that direct inspiration just in my personal life. It was like, oh, this is possible.
I'm so, because I know Angie's got some incredible ones, but and Jana Goodall, I got to meet her for 1 minute. I think I told you that, and she spoke at Florida, and it just was like, she was definitely one of my idols growing up. I mean, inspired me as a young boy. But this one, let me see if I can hold up the camera. Is not showing it. There you go. So,
Oh yeah,
that's like David
Attenborough.
Yes, my prized possession on my desk. Yes, from David Attenborough. He does not do computers. We asked him to come on the podcast, so he doesn't do anything with the computers, but he hand wrote a letter back to my lovely wife, who hand wrote him for me. You talk about heroes, and David Attenborough is definitely one of mine. I mean, growing up watching his documentaries as a kid, that inspires, that has so much impact on young people. But I think of people that we don't know of. One of your questions was like, you know, I think of Greg Rasmussen, one of the most incredible people I've ever had a chance to speak to. He's like the Jane Goodall of the African painted dog. If it wasn't for him, they probably would be even more on the brink of extinction. Where he's in Zimbabwe, he's out there in the field fighting for these animals. He needs money. He needs support. He's like a one-man band, and he's just incredible to hear him speak. But I wrote it down. It was because one of your questions was like the obscure, and these are the heroes that you get to meet. And like Natalie, you're out there, you're a conservation hero. Coral, you're out there, you're spreading the word, you're a conservation hero. You don't see that. Angie is my idol, you know, to kick all this off. But Ian Riccio, or Ian, I think it's Ian Riccio. I'm sorry, I interviewed him 4 years ago, LA Zoo. He works with amphibians. He was leading the charge for the Southern Mountain Yellow-Legged Frog. Nobody knows what that is. You do, but nobody knows, right? Nobody knows why that frog matters. And they have an exhibit at the LA Zoo, and they talk about their conservation. And I know we don't have tons and tons of time left. This will be a 5-hour conversation, because maybe we'll have to do part 2 of this. We'll have to do a part 2 in your season 3. You know, he tells the story of going up in the mountains, because one of the things you asked is like the impacts of extinction or facing extinction. And right in your backyards, you go into the valleys, and he said there's valleys where there's no frogs, but it's just a swarm of mosquitoes, just an absolute swarm. They're everywhere, you know. And then you go up over the hill, climb the mountain into another valley where these frogs are, and there's barely any mosquitoes, because the frogs are keeping the mosquitoes in check. So that overabundance of mosquitoes can lead to death of animals, because they drive animals crazy, make them anemic, they can spread disease, and that ecosystem is breaking down because there's no frogs there. And people don't, we talked about the megafauna. I love the elephants. Angie loves the zebras and the rhinos. But, you know, Ian is somebody fighting for these species that nobody cares about, or really, the charismatic. So he's a hero to me. He's an inspiration, like that. These people are out there. So keep doing the good fight.
And Angie, what about you?
Well, I have to give a big shout out to one of my mentors early on, Dr. Rachel Santemeyer. She was at the zoo and she got me really involved with black-footed ferrets, and we're still friends and colleagues to this day. And she just believed in me when I just, not that nobody else did, but she was like, I want to be like her. It's always fun when you find those types of people. She was just like such a rock star to me back then, over 20 years ago, and to this day she still is. And so, but bigger names, I remember, it's kind of a random one, but honestly, Willie Nelson, and don't laugh, not because of all of his antics, not even because of his music necessarily. I mean, he's got great music, don't get me wrong. But I went to Farm Aid with my dad, which is a concert that he puts together, or he used to put together 25, 30 years ago, when I was late teens or something like that, or maybe early teens, I don't know. But and I just was moved by like, oh, wow, you can be like a good rock star or whatever, but actually do good with that and get people united over, Farm Aid's about helping farmers and agriculture and stuff like that. And so I just loved that idea. And to this day, I think if you're somebody who is, whether you're a rock star or a movie star or a YouTube star or whatever, a political star, like you should be giving back to people, utilizing your talent or your name, and a lot of them do, right? Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, there's people that do obviously do that. But that was for me, I was like, that's really cool. If I ever became famous, which obviously, yeah, I would want to use my name to give back. But more recently, of course, Chris and I got a chance to meet Jane Goodall. But more recently, I've been following and really moved by the activism and conservation of Greta Thunberg. So just, yeah, I really like her. I like what she does. I like her stances. And yeah, she is one person making a huge change and inspiration, leading the charge, another woman. So those are some of mine. There's a list a mile long, but then, and Chris and I are blessed that a couple times a month we get to meet individuals out there that are, of course, all my heroes as well. I mean, it's almost like, obviously this is our passion project, but when I get to interview someone and hear their stories and what they're doing, it gives me so much hope. So,
yeah. Well, we're over about an hour, I think. So maybe we can do a speed round. I don't know.
Maybe some of those fun questions.
Yeah. We can do that real quick.
The girls had some fun questions.
Yeah. Do you want to ask one of those?
Yeah, I'll go for it. So it's so wonderful to talk to you guys, not only on like a conservation standpoint and the careers that you've had, but also because you're fellow podcasters, interviewing so many amazing people like you just mentioned, Angie. What has been like your absolute favorite episode, and specific to like a creature? So you have so many cool creatures that you talk about, but what is like one that has surprised you and that's been like a favorite that stayed with you?
For me, definitely orcas. They're just mind blowing. We need to do more of them. We need to do it again. That ended up being a 2-part episode, and that wasn't enough time. And out of my box per se, being a marine mammal, I tend to study land mammals, especially herbivores. Otherwise, I have African painted dogs was super fun. Carnivore hunting behavior. Not necessarily my wheelhouse, but if somebody just left me alone in a cabin, I would just want to read and try to understand some of this cooperative hunting by the carnivores, like the African painted dogs, wolves, that kind of thing. And then we haven't done it yet, but I can tell it's going to be my favorite. It'll be the grubby zebra. Chris and I have an inside joke. Yeah, we have an inside joke that we're going to save zebras. I'm like, it'll make me too sad to talk about zebras. I just love them so much. And Chris is like, it'll be our last episode, but I don't think it'll be our last. We're never going to have a last episode, so we need to just do zebras. So in the future, that'll be one of my favorites.
Yeah.
No, orcas was just that introduced me to animals having culture. Like, and that's a whole different discussion because I was like, what? How do animals have culture? That's a human thing, right? No, different dialects. The grandmas are training the offspring, the wave washing, the beach sheen, all the different pods. They are incredible creatures. One that's mantis shrimp is like, wow, they're something out of this world. They can see in 17, 18 different spectrums of color, and they create plasma they're just insane. And the one that really makes me want to cry is the gray whale. Off your coast now in California, they're always washing up, starving. It's one of the species I want to tell more of their story because I think it really highlights what's going on with global warming. Why they are starving, why they are at risk of extinction now, because they have no food, because there's no ice to make the food that they eat. So when they go to look for the food, there's nothing to eat. They hang around and they go, okay, well, I got to go back down south, and they starve, and they're all dying off the coast of California, Mexico, and Canada. So, or even Oregon and Washington, the whole west coast of the United States. But yeah, orcas is just, wow, that's just mind blown with them.
Orcas are so cool. I feel like that was another aha moment with me with that documentary that came out in, is it Blackfin?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because I don't know, we got to try to wrap this up real quick. Ocean. What did it leave you with? What impact? Natalie, when you watched that, what did you think of it? Because it's most recent, so 2025.
I thought it was really a good opportunity that David Attenborough used to highlight the disaster of fisheries management globally, and how there's been so much dysregulation with fisheries management that has been seen throughout our history with environmental science and monitoring. It's very hard to monitor fish populations. So if it's hard to monitor them, then how can you regulate trawling? And all of these other detrimental types of fishery practices that really should be banned, because it's not common to just continuously trawl the same plot of earth over and over. And it's certainly not sustainable to have this much bycatch. I think last night when we were watching it, one of the statistics was that 2/3 was
No,
2/3 or 1/3.
They only use
a third of the fish that they catch in their trawl nets. And I don't understand how that is economical from a business standpoint for the fisheries, to waste this much fish, to have this much gas, this much energy used to actually trawl the sea floor when they're not even actually using most of the animals that they're catching. So that stuck with me from that movie, is just highlighting the fisheries management issue around the globe.
Yeah, for me watching that, this is going to sound cliche, but obviously my name is Coral, so I feel very connected to corals. And I don't know if he said that it was a recent discovery or what, but him saying that corals are actually considered animals, I was like, oh man, because like to me they were always kind of like the plants of the ocean, or like the trees of the ocean, and no, they're animals. And so when it zoomed out and he was like, they're the largest like living organism, like it just hit home. And then to see that just like starkness of like, and they're all being bleached. What is the term? Trolling? Is it? You said
Trawling.
Bottom
trawling.
Yeah, bottom trawling. And to see that just stark difference of like pure abundance to absolute like desolate ground underneath there of what was there, and the healthy, just abundant nature of these areas, and for it to just be completely and utterly destroyed. And like I just felt like it was so visually powerful, like the satellite imagery of like you can see these lines on space. At first I didn't know what I was looking at, and then I had to rewind and have them say it again, and I was like, that one really like struck a huge chord with me. Like I started tearing up, realizing what those lines exactly were. And just like the pure disrespect. Like I think for me, like that's like the biggest issue I have. And in another, aspect of what conservation means, like we need to respect this planet and respect the oceans. We have zero business being under there. What are we doing? Who do we think we are going under there and, just completely destroying things that took forever to grow. And
for a few scallops, just for a few scallops. Yeah.
For what? I don't know. And then on top of it, there's just so many multi-layers. On top of it, then we have communities that have relied on this, that their entire culture is based in like their local fishing practices. And then to see, there was just a lot of visual like starkness of seeing these local fishermen against this giant, industrial trawler. It's just insane. And then on top of it, the Antarctica footage of these massive, like
That was shocking to see.
of whale. Is it a school of whale or is it a pod of whale?
Well,
Like
yeah,
pods of whales.
it's their feeding grounds. It's the krill
Yeah.
where the krill are the most abundant. So
Yeah.
it's all the whales go there, like
But
all
seeing
the humpbacks,
just
blue
how many
whales, all of them.
whales,
Yeah.
just seeing just how many whales are there, and then giant factories where mass production is happening like on the actual ships. It's just like it's like a slap in the face to these creatures. Like it's just pure disrespect. It's disrespecting not only the creatures that are there, but disrespecting local communities, and then disrespecting the rest of us that are just going to have to deal with the repercussions of this many years later, if not immediate now. So it was just like, I just thought it was a really, really important documentary. And of course, it was by the iconic David Attenborough. And I'm so happy that, he's still around at 100 years old. Jane Goodall's still around at, now 91 years old, and that they're still making these documentaries that need to be made. And I think it's really important because they're the type of people that like people are listening to. Like they have built this reputation. People trust them, people listen to them. And it's just so important that he got this documentary out at the age that he did. Because I think there's like an aspect to of like listen to your elders. That is incredibly important. And then of course, bringing like the hope element into the documentary, I thought was so awesome to see like the Channel Islands just like make such a big comeback in just 5 years. And the fact that that's like my backyard, basically, like that's so cool to see what a huge change that can happen in the ocean if we just let wilderness be wild. Like, come on, what are we doing? Like, I love that hopeful message of it can and will bounce back, but we have to let it. And then the statistic of less than 3% is protected.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I know.
Like,
blows your mind.
less than 3%. Come on. So I love that there's this 30 before 30 initiative that's happening. So
30 by 30. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your take on the movie?
Oh, geez. We went through it in the krill episode. I think Angie and I, we learned so much about krill. And I said, we have to do krill after watching that. And they're the foundation of the entire ocean. And, we did the math, and Angie and I had a good discussion about it, that, roughly 2% of the whale feeding ground is taken every year, but there is still a lot of debate about expanding that. They want to take more. What does that mean? What if krill collapse? What does that mean? What if krill collapse? Does that mean the whole ocean ecosystem collapses? Is if we kill off the ocean, that's it. Game over. I don't care about global warming. It's not going to be the Earth will not be habitable for any of us. And so why are we playing with Pandora's box? That's the part that really was wow. Besides the bottom trolling, I just for a few scallops, and I just was in the UK, and I had scallops when I was in the UK, And I was like, why? Now I won't eat scallops. Sorry, scallop fisherman. If that's how you're getting them, I'm not eating them. I'm just got to be, be
There's got to be a
mindful
better
consumer.
way. And I think it's just my quick synopsis is a must watch, and then go from there, and share. I think tell people about it, get people that talking, and because we all do that. We all ask our friends, hey, what are you watching on Netflix, or do you recommend any good series, or people do it on social media, especially now that it's summertime and some people have a little bit more time. So yeah, tell people, hey, take an hour and a half out of your life. You know, it's great educationally speaking. It's important. It's important. And as Coral mentions, it's very visually, I don't want to say appealing. That's not the right word. It's just it's stunning, and from the like, wow. So especially if you're more of like a visual learner, that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely a must watch for sure.
One thing I wish that they touched on was deep sea mining, even if I know that's not happening, but it's not currently happening right now. But I wish that there was just like a tiny like message about it of like, let's be preventative here. And, you know,
Scary. I don't know. Angie's dying to answer the turtle questions or tortoise questions.
Yes, I love that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got? The one truth and two lies, or what is it? Two lies, one truth.
Two truths and one lie.
Two truths,
yeah,
and one
two
lie.
truths
All
and
right.
one lie. So guess the truths and guess the lie
Okay.
about tortoises.
All right. Here we go.
So I'll list off 3 facts about tortoises, and you get to decide, yes, the 2 truths and the 1 lie. Tortoises are physiologically adapted to recycle water through their gallbladder. Tortoises brumate in the summer. Tortoises drink water through their... Oh, wait. I need to think of another truth. I was going to say another lie. Tortoises are not... Wait, now I'm overthinking this. It takes 10 years for tortoises to reach sexual maturity.
Well, we know that's true.
I was giving you an easy out there.
Yeah. I think the lie is the number 2 one. They bruminate in the summer.
They?
I think they bruminate in the winter. If they bruminate, I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, gallbladder.
That's too technical for me.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it releases bile, right? And so they digest fats and stuff. Do they recycle water there? I would think they recycle water in their
kidneys
and their urinary bladder. But yeah,
that's what I meant to say.
Urinary bladder.
I did not mean to say gallbladder. I meant to say just the regular.
2 lies and a truth then.
No,
that was my fault.
there you go. Yeah, because gallbladder, I'm like, wait a minute. Okay.
Okay, Chris, Angie.
I'll follow up, Angie.
We did 2 lies and a truth. I love it.
We figured you out, Natalie.
We'll just go with that.
I love it.
Tortoises actually brumate in the winter, not the summer. So they hibernate in the summer, and the brumation refers to a period of coolness in their environment when they retreat beneath the surface. And then it is true that tortoises are adapted to recycle water through their bladder. And even more interesting, they can decide where they want to send that water to hydrate other parts of their body, which is really fascinating. And that's just a sign of how resilient they are during drought conditions or just to live in the desert environment alone. So that's one of their coolest physiological features for sure. And it sets them apart from other animals. Yeah. And then the last one that I said was, yes, it takes 10 years at least for them to reach sexual maturity because they are a slow growing K species, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I wanted was it cute, crazy, and what's
the out of all of the animals that you guys have talked about on your podcast, what is the cutest, creepiest, and craziest?
Yes, I love that question.
Eopica looks like an Ewok. That is, I can't even believe that thing's real. Creepy was the goblin shark, just how it can extend its jaws. The craziest is honey badger, like wins. Honey badger just wins. Yeah, what do you think, Angie?
Yeah, we need to do another honey badger episode for sure. Just somebody the other day sent me an article like, can they really eat this? Or and I'm like, yes. Yeah. For me, Q is probably the quokka or the Irrawaddy dolphin. We just did that last week. Yeah. Creepy. That was really none for me, but I guess the big eyes of the eye kind of at nighttime, just a little bit Halloween-y for me. And then crazy, I went with mantis shrimp because Chris we already talked about him a couple times on this podcast because it was just a mind-blowing episode. And whenever Chris and I cover an invertebrate, we're always just like, wow, we should just do this as a podcast. So really cool. Yeah.
The fact that they see colors that we don't see, like me and my partner Q were talking about it last night. You can't even imagine it. No, I'm an artist. I'm like, it's just, it makes me speechless. Like,
I love it. Yeah, so fun.
All right. Well, should we start with what gives us hope? So start with Angie. We'll go around.
Sure. Yeah. So I think what kind of topic is, are we more hope after doing these podcasts? Are we more hopeful? Are we more cynical? Mm-hmm. Overall, I'm more hopeful because, as I mentioned earlier, Chris and I get to talk to these conservation heroes. Sometimes they're one-man bands, just like a one-person, two-people type nonprofit. And of course, sometimes they're these huge or more impactful conglomerates. But we meet people all the time that want the same things that we want. Our conservationists want there to be a healthy natural world and animal populations for future generations. So overall, I'm definitely more hopeful. I think with the political climate here in the U.S., it makes me a little bit more cynical and all of that. So I can do some unhealthy deep dives in my own brain. But that's why I'm glad I had this podcast and Chris and meet people like yourselves to keep fighting the good fight, right? Like, I think that's one of my bigger take home messages is just keep saying your message, keep up the activism, keep up the education. Obviously, you have to take care of your own mental health and physical health and all of that. But do that so that then you can get out there and fight the good fight. And by fight the good fight, it doesn't necessarily mean being a field biologist. It doesn't necessarily mean being a scientist or an educator. There's so many different ways. I mean, a lot of these nonprofits I talk to, they need help with their accounting. They need help with their marketing. Chris and I, if anybody's listening out there who's a marketer, Chris and I need help with our marketing, which is not something we didn't study it. We're not good. I mean, Chris is better at it than me, but so that those kinds of talents, there's so many ways you can get involved, and I see a lot of that, and that also brings me hope on when I am having like a dark day or dark moment. So, So I hope to keep meeting people like yourselves, and we'll keep this conversation going because I need it.
Sure, I'll popcorn off of that. Yeah. That I couldn't agree with you more. That it's really talking to other people that energizes me to keep moving forward in this mission, and this mission being to fight extinction. That's what gives me hope, is that we have to stay true to that calling in life. And whether or not we're all trained in, like you said, Angie, to be a field biologist or whatever it is where maybe you're more on the ground with conservation, you still feel called in some way to bring forth your unique gift to the world to solve this issue that we're now seeing with the 6th largest mass extinction that we have ever seen in our history. And so it's like hope is out of necessity, hope is action. And so when you continue to take action, then you continue to have hope. And so it's this positive feedback loop where it's almost addicting when you bring forth your talents because to make a difference, because you know you have a mission and an obligation in service to something bigger than yourself, to help people and the planet, to help wildlife. And like I said earlier, like it chooses you. And so when you show up for that mission, then you just generate this like self-motivation and then action. And I think hope is action, right? And we've seen this action taken by other role models. Like we've talked a lot about David Attenborough and Jane Goodall, and then our other role models who are just regular people. My professor in college, I have to shout him out, Dr. Steve Emsley, studies Adelie penguins in Antarctica. His story of studying these animals in the wild inspired me to want to do the same thing. And so that's the other element of this, is that the stories bring the hope, because through those stories, you learn about the action that people are taking and the solutions in place that maybe need some tweaking, maybe need some additional expertise that don't involve science. And so when you see the bigger picture in that way and how everyone can make a difference, then you don't have to be a scientist to give a shit. Then the world of opportunity and doors open for so many people to get involved in saving the fucking planet. As my shirt says.
I love that, Natalie. I need one of those. And I mean, I don't want to,
not to
take the win from Chris or Coral, but I will say this: the longer I do this podcast, the more I'm like, okay, we, at least here in the U.S., we need more teachers, more farmers, more scientists, more service-oriented people in policy.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do it. Like, I love studying what I'm studying, and I don't want to get involved in that mess that is policy making, whether even at the community level. It's better at the community level than, of course, at the state and federal level. But we actually need more of that. The people that have been doing it and are doing it. And so, I mean, that would be my only other thing, too, is if you do care about animals, the environment, that sort of thing, if you could take some of that to policy, because I feel like we need more people with louder megaphones that actually understand nature, animals, science, indigenous people. That we need more of that that are actually making laws, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's actually something that gives me hope that I've been seeing. Like, although specifically in the United States, it's seemingly like dark days, and it's just crazy times, especially environmentally, but on so many different levels. But I felt the shift. Like, I feel that there is a giant, like, everyone's just kind of putting their hand down and being like, I am fed up with this. Like, you can scroll online all day long and feel, the literally doom scrolling. Like, you can feel so much dread for what you find out. When you really get into these things that are being proposed, I mean, it's just like, it's dreadful. But what makes me hopeful on the other side of that is everyone that's just like fed up, seeing the truth of the matter, wanting to do what they can, realizing that they have to do what they can. And I've seen that just in, maybe that's the silver lining of it all. Like, just in the past, since January, friends that I've been saying, oh, Planet People, listen to my podcast, listen to this, or watch this, watch this. Like, they're finally doing it now. And I've been saying it for years. And now all of those friends are like, finally like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I do need to watch this. I want to get involved. Like, I'm fed up as well. This is crazy. And so it's just this weird silver lining of it all. And I think and I hope that it will end up being for the better, because it's going to force more people to care, because they have to. And I think that it's that obligatory feeling that you get once you realize that what you care about is getting destroyed or being disrespected or or just going extinct, So I that's what gives me hope, is to see this, and to bring it back to generational, like, to see these younger people get so riled up, which I think we need more of. I think people should be more riled up about these things. They should. We need to get away from the apathetic, like, it's too larger than me. And it's that same thing, Angie, that you were saying, that like one person can make a difference. Like we need to step away from the apathy and create action items, like very specific action items that people can take. And I love what you said about, we say it all the time. If you're an accountant, chances are high chance that you're going to be needed. If you're a marketer, and even if you want to give like just 5 to 10 hours of your week, it's going to make a huge difference for at least one organization that's just drowning, you know what I mean, in the policy work that they're doing, or, if you're podcasting or whatever, like chances are you're probably drowning just like we are over here at Planet People. So like, even if you can give just 5 to 10 hours, it's going to make such a huge difference. And so I love that message, and we spread it all the time. And that's why we love to have turning anxiety into action. And that's a segment that we're going to start putting in our show notes for our season 2 about desert conservation, because there's so much to be anxious about. But anxiety and stress is also the same place in your brain as excitement. So turn that anxiety and stress into excitement to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you take action, you're going to feel a little less stressed, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
At least you're doing something about it. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this all up, because now we're an hour and a half. So
sorry.
It's real. No, we could honestly, the 4 of us could talk for literally 4 or 5 hours. It's got that energy. Yeah. There's so many more things we wanted to discuss. So I think we should definitely plan for a part 2. What gives me hope is you guys, the younger generation, the millennials, the Gen Zers, you're the green generation. Angie and I see it in our young kids. I listened to my 10-year-old last week talk about it with his friend. Well, Dad, there's not even going to be a planet left to save. Like my 10-year-old, I was so upset. I was like my 10-year-old.
No, my 11-year-old the other day, we were in Michigan, and I came home from one of the local grocery stores there, and he was like, "Mom, I thought it was plastic-free July. Like all these are in plastic bags." Yeah. And I'm like, these were at my mom's house, and I'm reusing them and not getting new ones. I love that he called me out on it. And then, and I explained to him,
It's so cute.
Yeah. So it's that kind of stuff. And we need more of that. And then of course, always voting with your dollar too is important.
Yeah, we've got to keep them engaged. And I tell them, buddy, Dad's working hard. We're going to save the planet. Trust me. And people, there are a lot of people out there fighting hard, and we are winning slowly. I think there needs to be a little bit more sense of urgency, but we are winning. So don't lose hope. This was wonderful. Coral, Natalie, thank you. I definitely want to look at doing this again in the future.
Absolutely. We have so many more questions to go over.
We will do this again. Take care.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for having us.
It was a pleasure meeting all of you. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep caring and sharing and working hard, fighting the good fight. And yes, you both are very inspirational. I love what you're doing on your podcast. Keep it up. And have us back on season 3 or whenever. We'd love to do it again.
Anxiety into action. I feel like we do not even need to go super into it because we talk about it a lot at the end of this episode, but hope is action, climate action. If you can take action in your day or every day, whether it be reusing plastic bags, like Angie said, if you know a local organization near you, please get involved with them. Just volunteer and
be an advocate for wildlife, right? Use your voice.
Spread this podcast or, spread the ocean documentary that we talk about. There's so many ways to get involved.
It really is starting by just sharing, I think, those types of things that matter to you about conservation. If you just like watching documentaries, that's a start. Watch David Attenborough's new documentary. That was a great part of this discussion. And tune into this episode to kind of learn more about our perspectives on how David Attenborough can really shed light on these conservation messages that bring hope and provide that action component if you're looking to take action.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Planet People. We are thrilled to have you as part of our community of wildlifers who care about protecting the planet for future generations to enjoy. We hope that by listening, you feel inspired to connect with nature and become a steward of the planet by getting involved and taking action with your local community conservation organizations. Until next time, stay positive, planet people.
This episode was produced by Natalie Jean Cibel, Coral Carson, and Hugh Carr. Directed and edited by Coral Carson. Theme song by Hugh Carr under the artist name Flama. Thank you, team.